Welcome to ThumbWind's End of the Road in Michigan podcast. Each week, we select one of our amazing stories about the Great Lakes region and the tip of Michigan's thumb. These are taken from ThumbWind.com and presented here so that you can listen to it anytime, anywhere. Today we have a story about an 1800s missionary who spent over 37 years in northern Michigan ministering to Native American and early settlers. His name was Frederic Baraga, and his impact on the region is still evident today in the upper Great Lakes. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's tale from the end of the road. The Snowshoe Priest, Father Frederic Baraga's missionary impact on Michigan. Frederic Baraga was not the first missionary to work in Michigan, nor was he the most popular among his day's Catholic leaders. Nevertheless, his efforts were felt during the frontier period by the Native Americans, fur traders, and early settlers in the Northwest Territory of Michigan. He stood up for the Indian nations, asking only fairness and understanding. He taught the Indian the Catholic doctrine and faith in their own language and lived a life of service and poverty. When Barraga's life and work are reflected upon, it appears quite clear that he had a very profound effect upon the Native Americans of the time and the state of Michigan. Part 1: Barraga's Early Years. Frederic Baraga was born in Newdegg, Austria, on June 29, 1797. It was a time of great unrest, with Napoleon raging through Europe in the conquest of an empire. Frederic's family were once wealthy landowners, but the wars between Austria and France put them in debt. The Barriga family sent Frederick to Ljubljana to study under a tutor, since the conflict caused many schools to close. Here he studied and became proficient in 6 languages. When Frederick was 15, his parents died, leaving him under the care of his godfather, Dr. George Dolliner, professor of church history and canon law at Laibach Seminary. When he was 19, he went to the University of Vienna to study law. He was at the university that he decided to enter the priesthood. Barriga went to seminary, and on September 21, 1823, he was ordained a priest. He was assigned to the famous parish of St. Martin's in Slovenia's diocese. Catholics at St. Martin's were taught to promote Jansenism. Jansenist doctrines expressed the philosophy of predestination. Jansenists put a ban on pilgrimages, sodalities, processions, and novenas. Recitation of the rosary and prayers to the saints were also discouraged. As a consequence, many people avoided the church and expressed disfavor to those seeking a vocation in the priesthood. Barriga did not believe in this philosophy, and it was in Slovenia that Father Barriga started his first fight for the people under his direction. Barriga's conservatism within the Catholic faith emboldened him to encourage the people to return to the sacraments and go to confession. He started to promote Solidarity, a devotional and charitable lay association. The dean of the diocese charged the assistant priest with a violation of Jansenist principles. He was given a minor reprimand and transferred to an out-of-the-way parish, called Barika. It was here too that he tried to shake down Jansenism. However, he was hampered by the actions of his associates. After this second setback, Father Barriga thought of missionary work after he was impeded at St. Martin's. Fortunately, there was a call for a missionary to go to North America. This venture would be funded by the Leopoldini Foundation, named after the daughter of Francis I, Emperor of Austria. This was his chance to do real work without hindrance. In October 1830, he left Barika and was on his way to North America to meet Edward Fenwick, first Bishop of Cincinnati. His first mission was at Arbor Cross, which is near today's Michigan resort town of Harbor Springs. Here he would have a mission among the Ottawa Indians. Part 2: Barriga's work among the Native Americans. At Arbor Cross, the former missionary, Father Dijon, had baptized most of the Indians. It was Barriga's wish to Christianize the entire village. Barriga started to learn the Ottawa language. Learning the native tongue was not easy, so, until he mastered it, he was assisted by Chief Asainik. Asainik was a well-educated man and passed some aspects of the Catholic faith to his tribe. The chief acted as interpreter in the confessional, and due to the extreme respect the tribe had for their leader, the Indians did not object. Barriga writes of the Ottawa at an early point. The inhabitants of this part of the country are real heathens and idolaters. However, the priest found the innocent Indian's conversion was not difficult once the Indian understood the meaning of the Catholic faith. Barriga reopened a school at Arbor Cross, and 40 pupils were instructed by himself and a mixed-race woman from Mackinac. By the end of the year, Barriga baptized 131 Indians. Part 3: The Legend of the Snowshoe Priest. Barriga also traveled around Arbor Cross to teach and baptize anyone who wanted his service. He walked several miles to a small village called Old Arbor Cross to hold services in a birch bark chapel named after St. Paul. Barriga was to do many of these short and long excursions around his central mission for the rest of his life. Even as a bishop in his later years, he would travel 100 miles in snowshoes to help someone who needed spiritual help. One of Barriga's biggest fights was against the fur traders. A fur trader could barter Indians out of their furs that they had spent all winter trapping for practically nothing, leaving the uneducated and unassuming native with shiny trinkets and diluted whiskey. Part 4: Barriga's Book of Prayer in Native Language. Barriga's major accomplishment was printing a prayer book that was published entirely in the Ottawa language. He went to Detroit during the winter of 1832 to have it copied. During this time, there was a cholera epidemic that claimed many, including the famous Father Gabriel Richard. Here Barriga delivered Richard's eulogy, then went back to Arbor Cross with 1,000 prayer books and 2 teachers. Bishop Fenwick also died of cholera during the winter, and Father Rees, Vicar General, temporarily filled his seat. Barriga wrote Rees and expressed interest in moving his mission to Law Point, a small island on Lake Superior's western end. Barriga's mission had been successful. The Indians of Arbor Cross were almost wholly converted. Barriga felt he would be of better use to the Ojibwe of the north. However, this wish was not to be granted. Father Rees thought that the conditions near the Grand River warranted a mission there first. Many Indians and French Catholics were at the village of Grand River and needed the service of a priest. Rees's reasoning was many new Christian settlers would be coming, and Native Americans in the area would be in contact with Barriga. Thus, conversion possibilities would present themselves. Part 5: A Clash of Religious Missions. Grand River presented itself with a problem that Barriga was not aware of. A Protestant mission had been started 9 years previously, and in that time, the minister converted 10 Indians. This small group was bitterly opposed to a Catholic mission at Grand River. However, the number of Indians wishing to embrace Catholicism outnumbered the Protestants. The mission was built on the Indian side of the river, opposite a French settlement. Barriga also had problems with fur traders. The French fur traders did not like the missionaries, and Barriga did not like the traders' unfair practices and the liquor traffic. Once during Barriga's stay at Grand River, Barriga's life was threatened by a band of drunken Indians given whiskey by the traders. Barriga wrote, "Drunkenness and corruption boiled in the villages, and those who were recently converted found it difficult to believe that only a short time before, this had been a part of their lives. They calmly accepted the fact that conversion also put their lives in danger." Richard R. Elliott of Detroit wrote an accounting of whiskey and Indians for the American Catholic, January 1834. He notes that the traders bought raw Ohio whiskey for 25 cents a gallon, then traded for furs worth much more. At times the whiskey was diluted with water, and red pepper and tobacco were added. This concoction was hence called firewater. Elliott writes that a local Baptist missionary instigated a band of drunken Indians to attack Barriga's cabin at Grand River. Yet Barriga escaped harm. We will be back after this short message. Welcome back. We will continue with Part 6. Treaty Concerns for Barriga. The United States government wanted to buy Indian land around the Grand River, and the Ottawas would not sell. Father Barriga did not want to see the Indians removed west, so he supported the Native Americans in the stand against the government. The government pressured Bishop Rees to remove Barriga, thereby eliminating resistance to the idea of the Indians selling their land. Father Vyzhovsky of St. Clair came to Barriga and offered to take charge of Grand River's mission so Barriga could go to Lake Superior. At first, it looked as if Barriga would only be on Lake Superior for the summer months, then returning to Arbor-Croche to attend to the mission there. He went to Arbor-Croche first to examine the conditions. He found the parish faith firm and wrote to Bishop Rees expressing this. He traveled to Mackinac then to Sault Ste. Marie, to find a passage to Madeline Island at the village of La Pointe on the western end of Lake Superior. He took a small trader's vessel, and 18 days later, July 27, 1835, he arrived at La Pointe. By 1835, La Pointe was a busy fishing village and headquarters of the American Fur Company. Barriga was the first priest on the island in 164 years. Jesuit priest, Père Marquette had been at La Pointe in 1669. La Pointe was a stronghold for the Ojibwe in their war against the Western Sioux. The American Fur Company came to La Pointe to set up a post in this centralized spot among the fur traders. Many of the inhabitants of La Pointe were mixed race and worked for the American Fur Company. The language that was spoken, besides Ojibwe and English, was French. This language was brought to the area by fur traders and Jesuit missionaries many years before. Within a week, a small church was built at La Pointe. This was the first church ever on this island. The Protestants had been here many years, yet never saw to building one. Again, Protestants complained and asked the government not to allow the Catholics to set up a mission. Barriga was allowed to continue with a little argument. The missionaries' first trip outside La Pointe was 90 miles southwest to Fond du Lac. This journey would take 3 days by canoe. There he met with a pious fur trader named Pierre Cot. Cot had instructed many Indians on the ways of Catholic teachings. Here, too, the Indians were ready and willing to be baptized. Barriga writes, a considerable number of pagans have already been received into the bosom of the Church, namely, 148. The priest continued to teach and baptize in the area for about 1 month as the harsh northern Michigan winter approached. Barriga still had not received many supplies for his new mission, including winter clothes. Yet that did not stop him from continuing his mission that winter with the poor Indians. Part 7. Barriga's success was built years before by the Jesuits. It is interesting to note why the Indians were ready to embrace the Catholic faith rather than Protestantism. The Jesuit missionaries had some through the Lake Superior area in the 1600s and worked hard with the Indians. Stories passed down through the generations told of these Jesuit black robes. The other factor on the success of Barriga's missions was that he could speak French. The French fur traders had little interest in Indian land. The French treated the Indians like a brother, and many fur trading areas were mixed race. To be sure, the number of mixed-race children was an evident sign of the closeness of the Ojibwe and French traders and trappers. A highly significant factor of Barriga's missionary success was the priest's willingness to learn the Indian language. It was easier to have one priest to learn the Anishinaabe people's language of Ojibwa than for a whole tribe to learn French. The last aspect that added to the success of Barriga's mission was that he worked alone. He had no family to worry about in surviving in the harsh country of Michigan. This allowed him to move quickly, and solve problems and serve an extremely large diocese. Part 8. Barriga continues to grow the faithful in North Michigan. Barriga had been at La Pointe for about 2 years when a new church was built. 3 more churches were rebuilt to accommodate a growing number of converts and parishioners in 5 years. By 1843, Barriga had heard of the need for a missionary to the east, at Lance. After 10 years at La Pointe, he went to the copper mining area of Michigan's Keweenaw Peninsula to start anew. Lance was probably the most demanding mission that Barriga was to secure. Indian problems and Methodist pressure to get out of Lance made for sharp differences in the early days of Barriga's mission there. With time, the Methodist mission changed clerical hands, and Barriga developed a deep friendship with the Methodist minister, one John Pittezel. As a result, both tasks flourished with time. Barriga used Lance as a base mission while taking care of the missionary posts of Grand Portage, Fond du Lac, and La Pointe. Also at Ontonagon, and the newly formed copper ore mines of the Keweenaw. During his time at Lance, he completed a revised edition of an Ojibwe prayer book he had printed in Detroit while traveling with Bishop Lefevre. Part 9. The elevation of Bishop Barraga. Barriga had been at Lens about 10 years before he was consecrated Bishop of Amazonia and Vicar Apostolic of Upper Michigan, on November 1, 1853. From here, he went to Europe to find funds and clergy for the Lake Superior country. While Barriga was in Europe, he went to the Leopoldini Society for funds. This was to help perpetuate and organize his yet unorganized diocese. He also went and received gifts from the rulers of Austria and Bavaria. Other than raising money, he also needed priests to help him run the missionary posts. His parishes stretched from the Traverse Bay across the entire Upper Peninsula to the tiny fur trading outpost Grand Portage on the western side of Lake Superior. He went to Saint Sulpice in Paris to find future missionaries. He needed 10 but found only 5. Soon he was on his way back to North America and Sault Ste. Marie. The Sioux was his choice of the Episcopal because it was considered a vital historical place for the native peoples and offered a centralized communication point between Lake Superior and the lower lakes. Barriga continued his journeys up and down the coast of Lake Superior, baptizing and confirming. It was during Barriga's early years as bishop that so much work needed to be done in his extensive diocese. The Jesuits attended to the Sioux, and the priests from Europe began to trickle in. Barriga assigned each to a post where they were needed. Father Barriga was about 60 when he was the bishop, yet he still traveled in snowshoes when the need arose. Barriga was becoming exhausted with his missionary life, yet critical operational problems were occurring in the Keweenaw and the Lens parish. The copper boom produced an unexpected jump in the western Upper Peninsula population, which meant that the church would need to respond to the growing area. The cities of Ontonagon, Houghton, Hancock, Calumet, and the rest of the Keweenaw Peninsula created a metropolis of sorts. It has been said that the area of Houghton became the largest city west of New York. At one time during this period, Michigan considered locating its capital at Houghton, Hancock. Yet, during this time, the area had only 1 or 2 priests. Barriga would have instead stayed out of the Ontonagon area, but he placed Martin Fox at the St. Patrick's Church. Fox turned out to be a failure, and Barriga continued to have problems with the area. Barriga administered the diocese well until he was 70, going to the Upper Michigan country's highest reaches until he could walk no more. He died in 1868 at the age of 71. Final observations. Barriga's success and shortcomings. Barriga's missions were a success even though he thought otherwise at times. He taught and protected the original inhabitants, the Indians, and found that he wanted almost to become one of them. He baptized thousands and set up and built many churches. He tried to work within government laws to keep the Indians in their native land, even among the white man. His most impoverished and most desolate mission, at Lens, became his most favorite. He proved that he could go in and help even the steadfast non-believer, even where other missions had tried and failed. Barriga did all this and more. Yet there were also areas that he lacked in strength. He did not use his potential political pull as a successful missionary to get what he needed in the Lake Superior country. He had a constant battle in finding priests, getting government help, and fending off Protestant pressure. He also diluted himself to serve as many potential converts that he could find rather than managing several stable missionary posts. Finally, he paid more attention to the Indian problems than the new copper miner settlers after 1840. All in all, the good aspects far outweigh the bad, and his works gained the public mind's respect. In May of 2012, Bishop Frederic Baraga was declared venerable by Pope Benedict XVI. This bestows the title of Venerable Bishop Baraga. The application for sainthood of the Snowshoe priest started in 1952. The movement is in its beatification stage. So far, one miracle has been attributed to the intercession of Barriga. An achievement of another miracle will hopefully result in canonization as a saint. This concludes this week's story. Thank you for taking the time to listen to ThumbWind's End of the Road podcast. If you like this kind of tale, you are invited to subscribe. Just search for The End of the Road in Michigan, from wherever you're listening from. Please watch for and download our next podcast and take a moment to give us a review. Have a great day.